Everybody wants to win a music grant, but not everybody is aware of what it takes to win one, and more importantly, how likely they are to actually win funding. I've done a few videos on different grant organizations, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about how likely are you to win a grant from Canada Council for the Arts. Are you ready? Let's do this. Are you an artist, producer, engineer, or music professional that's looking for funding for your music career? Could you benefit from having funding for studio time, mixing and mastering, or even marketing costs? I think I have something for you. I've written a free ebook. It's 9 pages, super short and digestible, where I break down the 6 main places that artists and professionals like yourself can find funding for their musical projects. If this sounds like it's of value to you, please click the link below and you can download this for free today and benefit from this knowledge. I hope this helps. I'll see you guys soon. Peace. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is your boy 5-Piece producer and engineer extraordinaire. Thank you for checking out today's video. We're going to explore grants a bit further in today's video and talk about how likely are you to win a grant from Canada Council for the Arts. This is going to be super interesting, but before we get into that, I want to ask if you could please like and subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot of amazing content out there ready to help you with all your projects and your funding goals, whether it's recording, mixing, mastering, or winning a grant for yourself like we're talking about today. Well, let's talk about how likely are you to win a grant from Canada Council for the Arts. In order to do this, I'm going to jump on the computer and show you some information that I've discovered, show you the research I've been playing with, and ultimately come to the conclusion and let you know exactly how likely you are to win. You ready? Let's jump on. When it comes to Canada Council for the Arts, there's a few different places we can look to get some information to figure out how likely we are to win a grant from them. Now, I'm specifically going to navigate to the research tab on their website. And there's 2 places. You can go to Stats and Stories, which is going to be a bit more of a general overview, and you can check out the data tables. I'm using the data tables in this video, so let's just open that up. I'll show you what I'm going to be analyzing. So they have a bunch of different information from various years, and specifically we're going to look at their corporate scorecard, and we're also going to take a look at their funding overview. Now you might be wondering what the difference is, so I'm going to open up each one right now and show you what they look like. So this here is the overview, and you can see it gives you a limited amount of information, some stuff broken down by territory, and just a few totals. This is cool, but it's not going to give us a full picture. However, if you look here, this is the corporate scorecard, and this one is a lot more detailed. It breaks things down a bit more. There's still going to be some holes that we need to fill in here, but at least we can get some idea by looking at this information. So I'm going to jump in and show you my conclusions. However, if you want to look at this yourself, you absolutely can by going to their website and navigating just like I showed you and just looking at the data yourself and drawing your own conclusions. So the first thing we want to answer when it comes to Canada Council for the Arts and winning funding is how much funding was given away in total. Now, when you look at the funding overview that I mentioned, that second document, you'll find out that Canada Council gave away roughly $246 million through the 2018 to 2019 calendar year. And they gave away roughly 7,474 grants across all of their programs. I'm going to break this down a little bit more, but if we were to just look at these numbers alone and average it out, each grant would be roughly worth about $32,920.77. Of course, things were not distributed evenly, but this is still a significantly high number for an average grant amount, which is pretty important. So the thing we really want to dive into here is how many applications were actually approved. By knowing this, we'll understand our actual chances of getting approved as well. Now, I want to mention that there's 2 different data sheets, like I said, and each one has some conflicting information. They both provide different totals, and I'm not 100% sure why, but I'm going to explore both and try to average them out together. So again, this is my own interpretation of the data, and I still need to get some answers from Canada Council, but I wanted to get this video out there in the meantime. So according to their corporate scorecard, there was about 12,460 applications to Canada Council's programs. However, of that 12,460, only 7,325 were actually approved. Now, this is where things get interesting. According to the other document that I mentioned, the overview table, there was actually 13,130 applications, so slightly more applications to their programs according to this document for the same year. And similarly, there's actually more approvals, not too many more, but still 7,474 applications were approved in this particular instance. So we're getting a few different numbers that are very close, but still different from one another. However, when you average them both out, you're going to find out that roughly 58% of applications were approved and offered funding. So basically, more applications were awarded funding than they were rejected. And this is pretty important to know, especially compared to other grant organizations. Now, I want you to keep in mind that Canada Council funds a lot of different types of people. And first of all, they have different applicant types. So what I'm looking at here is not just individual artists, but instead it's organizations, artists, and groups. So we have 3 different types of applicants that are able to receive funding here, and that it does include these bigger organizations and productions. And you're going to understand what I mean when you look at this, which is they don't just fund music artists, but they fund circus arts, dance, deaf and disability arts, digital arts, indigenous arts, inter-arts, literature, media arts, multidisciplinary arts, music and sound, which is what we're looking at, theater, and visual arts. And unfortunately, the data that they provide does not break things down based on the role or the discipline of the person applying. It just gives us grand totals. Now, while we keep that in mind, let's take a look at artist applicants only. On the corporate scorecard, it lets us know the numbers for artist applicants exclusively, which can be very helpful since probably most of us applying are going to be individual artists and not organizations or groups. Now, when you look at that data, it says that there was roughly 7,933 applications to Canada Council's programs. 3,274 were approved. And when you do the math on that, you're going to realize that roughly 41% of applications were approved and offered funding. This is still very significant, especially compared to these other grant programs that I've looked at in the past. So, how many actual applicants, aka individuals, received funding? So if we're looking at all programs and all applicant types, once again, there's roughly 8,302 applicants that requested funding. That's this many individuals that are asking for the money. However, of that 8,302, roughly 5,204 actually received the funding. So when you break that down, you're going to figure out that there's roughly 62% of total applicants were approved and offered funding. Now, what happens if we're asking the same question but looking at artist applicants only? With that in mind, there was roughly 5,766 applicants that requested funding. And of that 5,766, 2,736 actually received the funding. So these numbers are a little bit different, but still they're fairly close, and that means roughly 47% of artist applicants, artists once again, were approved and offered funding. So almost 50% of people that applied were actually able to get the funding. So how many applicants were first-time grant recipients? I think this is a very interesting question to ask because if you've never applied to a grant before, it's very daunting, and sometimes you wonder, am I even able to get this if this is my first time applying? Now, if we look at the numbers, there's roughly 5,204 total grant recipients. So these are people that won the grants and got funded. But when you look at that amount of people, you'll realize that there was about 1,643 of them that were first-time grant recipients. So of the people that won, 1,600 of them were first-time recipients. They won the grant for the first time in their careers. And that's pretty significant because that means about 32% of all grant recipients were receiving the grant for the first time. So almost a third of people that won the grant were first timers, whereas everybody else, they had already won one before. So now if we consider this in the context of all the applicants, including the people that were rejected, roughly 20% of all applicants that applied were first-time grant recipients. So 20% of the people that won a grant out of every single person, all applicants, including those that were rejected, 20% of them won a grant for the very first time. This is really, really promising news, especially if you're someone that hasn't won a grant before. So now if we're going to look again at all programs and the artist applicants only, so only individual artists, we're going to find out that there was roughly 2,736 total grant recipients. And of that 2,736, about 1,081 of them were first-time grant recipients. So these are just the artists once again. When you break that down, roughly 40% of the total artist recipients, so the individual artists that applied, 40% of them were receiving a grant for the very first time. Now, I know earlier in the video I mentioned that Canada Council didn't really break down what specific disciplines are getting funded, but I think I may have found something that actually does give us some more information. If you navigate back to their website and go to the data tables, you can find this open data table spreadsheet that you can download and check out, which I've already done and I have right here. Now, I've already organized this based on the discipline, which is music and sound recordings. And what this spreadsheet really is doing is it's showing us who actually received the funding, whether they were an individual or a group or an organization, and of course, how much money was actually given away. And this is important because if you do win a grant from these guys, you will end up on a document like this. This will be public knowledge. But what we're going to do is we're going to use this to understand how likely are we to win funding, and more specifically, how much funding can we win as an applicant. So back to the question at hand here, which is how much funding was given away to music and sound projects. Now, when you look at this spreadsheet and you add it all up, it's kind of all over the place, but if you're able to organize it like I did, you're going to find out that there was roughly $47,948,687 paid out to roughly 1,767 grants. Now, this is strictly to music and sound recording projects, so it's not to the circus arts, to the literature, to the theater, none of that. This is strictly music and sound projects, which is what we're really trying to get to the bottom of. Now, when you do the math on that, the average grant amount awarded was roughly $27,135.65. This is quite a large sum of money. It's quite a high average. So this is really, really good information. And when you look at it with the total number of grants given away, the total amount of funding given away, which to be honest on the spreadsheet, it's a little bit different from even the other two documents, and I'm not 100% sure why, but on the spreadsheet, it was roughly $247 million given away. This $47.9 million that I just discussed that was paid out strictly to music and sound projects represents about 19% of the total funding given away. So almost 20% or 1/5 of applications that were approved and funded were music and sound projects. So ultimately we come to this, which is what is the big takeaway? How likely are we to ultimately win funding from Canada Council from the Arts? Judging by the numbers that we've seen here, more than 4 in 10 applications get funded. This is a rough number that I've come to based on everything that I just showed you, but it's very, very promising, especially when you see some other programs that have about a 1 in 10 chance of getting funded. So what this ultimately means is artist applicants have roughly a 50% chance of getting funded. You see a lot of these numbers really floating between the 40 and 60% range a lot of the times. And we know that if we were to send in 2 applications, chances are one of them will get approved, assuming that it's a high quality application, that we did well, that answers the questions of the organization, and proves that we have a very viable project to invest in. So as you can tell, you have a very high likelihood of winning a grant from Canada Council for the Arts, much more so than other grant organizations like Factor and Ontario Arts Council. And if you want to see how likely you are to win a grant from these organizations, I'm going to leave a couple links below for you to watch some other videos where I talk about this. Now, if you want help with grants and how to win them, I actually have created a course with finding funding, and it's called How to Win Canadian Music Grants. I'm going to leave a link to that in the description below as well. And if you're interested, you could check it out and even take the first 6 lessons for free. You're going to learn all about grants, how to win them, how to apply, and ultimately set yourself up to actually get funded in your career. I hope you got value out of this video. Please like, subscribe, and share once again. Share it with somebody you know is going to benefit from this knowledge, and I'll see you again soon. Peace out.
5